It's Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. Tit-tat tariffs, more dispatches from the Supreme Court, and the return of the dire wolf? Not so fast. Next on the AM Update.
It was a mistake for China to retaliate. President, when America is punched, he punches back harder.
And we're doing very well in making, I call them tailored deals, not off the rack. These are tailored, highly tailored deals.
The whole debate is so fundamentally backwards and upside down. It's based on a fallacy. And the fallacy is this, that somehow in a trade, someone must lose.
We done picking cotton.
That kind of research, a research that has any capacity of causing a pandemic through gain-of-function work, should be banned.
At the White House, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt talked about the ongoing, don't call it a trade war, between the United States and China. Of course, last week on Liberation Day, after President Trump enacted heavy tariffs on Chinese imports, the Chinese responded with tariffs of their own. So yesterday, the Trump administration announced 104% tariffs on Chinese imports into the United States. Caroline Leavitt says China needs to come correct.
Look, I just spoke to the president about this, and he believes that China wants to make a deal with the United States. He believes China has to make a deal with the United States. It was a mistake for China to retaliate. The president, when America is punched, he punches back harder. That's why there will be 104% tariffs going into effect on China tonight at midnight. But the president believes that she and China want to make a deal. They just don't know how to get that started. And the president also wanted me to tell all of you that if China reaches out to make a deal, he'll be incredibly gracious, but he's going to do what's best for the American people.
China Commerce Ministry issued a statement yesterday on U.S. tariffs. It says it's going to fight to the end if the U.S. insists on its ongoing measures, and they're vowing necessary actions to, quote-unquote, defend their rights. Caroline Leavitt once again said the president isn't considering extensions or delays in these tariffs.
The president was asked and answered this yesterday. He said he's not considering an extension or a delay. I spoke to him before this briefing. That was not his mindset. He expects that these tariffs are going to go into effect. And you said something very important, Elena, in your question. You said the president has captivated the attention of the world. Absolutely, he has. And it's about time we have a president in the Oval Office who is putting the world on notice and is putting the American people first, and again, is using the leverage of the United States to negotiate good trade deals.
Last night at the NRCC gathering in D.C., Trump went even further.
But the shrill voices that you're hearing this week about tariffs are the same scoundrels and frauds who never thought twice about when the United States lost 90,000 factories and plants. Think of that, 90,000.
At a signing ceremony for an executive order aiming to strengthen U.S. energy infrastructure, President Trump talked about those tariffs.
Right now, Japan is flying here to make a deal. South Korea is flying here to make a deal, and others are flying here. I mean, my only problem is I'm not sure I have enough. We're going to have to use those great law firms, I think, to help us with that. But we're going to probably do that, actually. We're going to use them, and we're getting them for the right price. Because we need a lot of talent. We have a lot of countries coming in that want to make deals.
So it sounds like things are already happening in terms of removing or at least lowering some of these tariffs on countries. You just heard presidents mention Japan and South Korea. Senator Rand Paul is one of the voices of dissent on Trump's own side, who says the entire debate that's happening right now on to tariff or not to tariff is based on a faulty premise.
How did we get here? How did the Republican Party get here, Senator?
How did we all get here? I mean, the whole debate is so fundamentally backwards and upside down. It's based on a fallacy. And the fallacy is this, that somehow in a trade, someone must lose. That somehow when you trade with someone, there's a loser and someone's taking advantage of you and China's ripping you off or Japan's ripping you off. It's absolutely a fallacy. Every trade that occurs in the marketplace is mutually beneficial. If you have a free society and I trade with you, if you want to sell me your coat and I give you $200 for it, we both agree to it and we're both happy with the trade. No American consumer trades with China. They trade with Walmart, or they may buy something from China, but they individually buy something they want and they make a decision. The trade is always a win-win. Now, you could artificially do this accounting between countries and say, oh, trade deficit, look at this trade deficit. But I have a trade deficit with my grocery store. The people who employ me, if I work for Corvette and they employ me, they have a trade deficit with my labor. They buy my labor and I never buy their cars. So you can have this artificial accounting and it makes it look like a bad thing, but you have to ask yourself, is trade good or bad? And if you look at the trade deficit, in times of a recession, the trade deficit goes down. So if the tariffs push us into a recession, we could reduce the trade deficit because we're all buying less stuff. We have to get back to the fundamentals of, is trade good or is trade bad?
That's Senator Rand Paul, and he's absolutely correct about all of that, except for one premise. Free trade is supposed to be a way for countries to gain prosperity for their governments and their citizens. It should be their citizens first and then their government, but that's the way that free trade should operate, so that we don't settle our differences with munitions and gunpowder of various kinds. That's what free trade should be. It should not be a way to gain hegemony and gain supplies and critical supply lines over other countries in a strategic way to weaken those other countries. And that's exactly what countries like China, really China is the main offender here, have absolutely done. But otherwise, some nice thoughts there from Senator Rand Paul on trade. Moving on, the Supreme Court on Tuesday said the Trump administration can move forward with the termination of 16,000 probationary federal workers across 6 agencies and departments, rescinding a lower court order that they be reinstated as litigation challenging the layoffs continue. In a brief, unsigned order, the court said the 9 labor unions and nonprofit groups that had challenged the firings lacked standing in the matter. The group's allegations of harm are presently insufficient to support the organization's standing. According to the nation's highest court, Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson indicated they would have denied Trump's request. So 2 days in a row now, the Supreme Court, in their own way, starting to maybe put the kibosh on lower courts' just judicial activism. The Trump administration plans to begin fining illegal aliens subject to deportation $998 a day if they do not leave the United States. Department of Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin told Fox News, quote, illegal aliens should use the CBP Home app to self-deport and leave the country now. If they don't, they will face the consequences. This includes a fine of $998 per day for every day that illegal aliens overstay their final deportation order. So they're using that app that the Biden administration introduced in order to just basically legalize illegal aliens. They're using that app against illegal aliens now, targeting them for removal. Saw an interesting theory the other day. The reason the White House has made such a big deal and such a big photo opportunity of marching all of these deportees out in front of cameras and chaining them up with handcuffs and other sundry leg shackles. The reason they're making such a big deal out of this is in order to send a message to other illegal aliens in this country. Hey, and you see that person in the chains getting set to go to the El Salvador jail? Yeah, that could be you very soon. You better get out before that happens. Interesting theory. And now this, here is the dumbest woman in America, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, literally doing the joke that I've made for weeks now. Here is a Who Will Pick the Cotton update.
So I had to go around the country and educate people about what immigrants do for this country, or the fact that we are a country of immigrants.
Right.
The fact is, ain't none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. Okay, so I'm lying. Raise your hands. You're not. We done picking cotton.
She actually did the joke that I have been making. Because this is one of the variations of the arguments for why we need unfettered open borders. Who's going to pick our vegetables? Who's going to pick the cotton? Who's going to be our human chattel? Our chattel slaves. And there is Congresswoman Crockett making that exact analogy. Who's going to pick the cotton? Because us black people, we're done doing that. Good Lord. When we come back, is the dire wolf about to come back? I don't think so. Surprise, surprise, the flu jab, not effective. And Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, newly installed head of NIH, says this type of research needs to be banned yesterday. That's coming up next. That is the sound of Romulus and Remus to what they're being called are direwolf pups that have defied all odds with the world's first de-extinction. The pups were genetically engineered by scientists after going extinct thousands of years ago. That's caught the headlines around the world that the direwolf has come back thanks to science. Here, I'm sorry to disappoint you. But it's not really the direwolf. It's not the direwolf. It's a gray wolf that's been genetically edited, modified to produce something that looks like a direwolf. Maybe. Who knows? So it's not really a direwolf. It's just a gray wolf with white wool. That's all. Sorry. I don't know how many direwolf fans there are in the audience right now, but it's not actually a direwolf. I talked yesterday about RFK Jr. and his head-scratching support for the MMR vaccine. Well, the RFK Jr. takes away and he also giveth. Here he is on fluoride in the water.
It should not be in our water. Fluoride should not be in our water. Fluoride had a strong justification in the 1940s. When it was added and people didn't understand the science and they thought its benefit to our teeth was systemic. By drinking it, it would enter your body and somehow protect your teeth. Now we know that there is no systemic advantage, zero systemic advantage, and that the only advantage comes from topical application. So it's the water that passes through your mouth. You can achieve that benefit from brushing your teeth. And in the era of fluoridated toothpastes and mouthwashes, it makes no sense to have fluoride in our water. The evidence against fluoride is overwhelming. In animals, in animal models, and in human models, we know that it causes IQ loss, profound IQ loss, and it's dose-related. So if the more fluoride you get, the higher levels in your drinking water, your urine, the more likely it is you lose IQ and also other neurological injuries like ADHD.
I think that is a positive. It never made sense to me why fluoride was being put in the water. Because as you just heard RFK Jr. say there, you can achieve the stated benefits through topical use, not through, ingesting it, putting it into your bloodstream, essentially. Good for RFK Jr. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says he's running for Senate.
Against John Cornyn, who apparently is running again for his fifth term, which would put him there 3 decades. It's definitely time for a change in Texas. We have another great U.S. Senator, Ted Cruz, and it's time we have another great senator that will actually stand up and fight for Republican values, fight for the values of the people of Texas, and also support Donald Trump, in the areas that he's focused on in a very significant way.
Attorney General Ken Paxton of the state of Texas. If for no other reason than I just want to see John Cornyn squirm, I wholeheartedly endorse Ken Paxton for Senate in the great state of Texas. Make John Cornyn squirm. I want to see John Cornyn just debase himself, cover himself in MAGA in order to curry favor with the MAGA base. I cannot wait for that. Moving on, a new study from the Cleveland Clinic amongst 53,402 working-aged Cleveland Clinic employees. They were unable to find that the influenza vaccine has been effective in preventing infection during the 2024-2025 season. The same study also showed that those who had the flu jab were actually more likely to get the flu. Who could have seen that coming? And now here's this. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya was interviewed by the Free Press recently and was asked about that pesky research I'm sure you've heard of.
Should gain-of-function research be banned?
Okay, so you have to be careful here. There's some gain of function research which is entirely benign, has no chance of causing a pandemic, and would advance is vital tool for advancing human health, right? So, for instance, you have some protein you want expressed so that you can use it as a treatment. Like insulin is a good example of this. You change the DNA of an E. coli, use the E. coli bacteria to produce the insulin cheaply. That's gain of function work. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is gain of function work that has the potential to cause a pandemic. You take a virus you find in a bat cave in China, coronavirus, you add a biochemical element. This is not theoretical. You add an element to it that makes it more transmissible among human cells. And then you do that in a setting where it might infect the lab technician who takes it home without knowing it, infects their family, and causes a pandemic that causes so much damage. That kind of research, a research that has any capacity of causing a pandemic through gain of function work, should be banned. I think it has no place in among the toolkit of scientists. It's essentially what you have is you have a few scientists taking risks on behalf of the entire human population. And to do it in an unregulated way makes absolutely no sense to me. Even if you don't agree that is what led to this past pandemic, I happen to think it does. But even if you don't agree, going forward, why would you say yes, you should take that risk? There aren't enough benefits to that kind of research to warrant causing a pandemic that can kill 10 million, 20 million people, if you include like the lockdown harms, and cause trillions of dollars of damage and set society back for so long. What knowledge gain would be worth that?
It's newly installed NIH Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya on gain of function research. How there is some gain of function research that doesn't actually have the propensity or the ability to cause a pandemic, and others that we saw very much does have the ability to cause a pandemic, as we saw back 5 years ago. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya interviewed by the Free Press. And finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. I'm thinking about running for president. Running for president in 2028. In case things don't work out with J.D. Vance or Ron DeSantis or Marco Rubio or anybody else who wants to run for president. And I'm running on a very populist agenda. I have a three-legged stool of my presidential platform. A three-legged stool. Here's the first leg. Let me know what you think. Number one, I'm running on deporting the pre-diabetic Costco family to Siberia. For the good of the country, these people need to go. They have to go. Who's the pre-diabetic Costco family? I think it's like the Rizzler or Big AJ and Little Justice. The friend, I think the friend is the Rizzler or something, but they're just pre-diabetic and they just go around talking about the doom. It's just very odd. And then they eat the most rich and sugary things they can find at Costco and they video themselves. It's just very, very attention-seeking. And I'm just viscerally opposed to attention-seeking individuals. And so they can get all the attention they want in Siberia. So I'm deporting them to Siberia. The second part of my three-legged party platform or presidential platform, I'm going to throw that blaspheming Colts fan in prison. You know the guy that I'm talking about. It's this guy who went viral this last football season.
Woo! This is our Colts. This is our team. We bleed blue.
Yeah, this guy took a worship song, and actually one of the better worship songs out there these days, and turned it into a stupid little song about the Indianapolis Colts. He's going in prison. So that is number two of my three-legged presidential platform. And then number three, corporal punishment for those who do not accelerate while getting on freeway on-ramps and try to get onto the highway or interstates going 30 miles per hour. Corporal punishment for them. And maybe corporal punishment for those who don't know how four-way stop signs work. So that is my three-legged presidential platform. Do you think I can have success with this? deport the pre-diabetic Costco family to Siberia, imprison the blaspheming Colts fan, and corporal punishment for bad drivers. Let me know. Also, you can vote in this week's poll of the week. I asked you, what do you think the end goal, the end game of Trump's tariff program will be? Trust the plan? We're headed for a Great Depression? China goes kinetic? Something else? Vote over at Real AM Update on X, at Real AM Update on X. Look for the pinned post with the poll. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.